Now let's go live now to San Francisco, where we're joined by the former United States Ambassador to Australia and former Special Counsel to President Obama in the White House, Jeffrey Bleich. Thank you very much also for joining us at such a late hour. And thank you for your patience just then as well. Look, firstly, Biden
Thank you, Sherry.
Did speak of healing in his speech today, as we just mentioned. Do you think there is a recognition among Democrats that, despite the predictions of the pollsters and the media, this was not a landslide, this wasn't a blue wave, that it is a divided America? Do you think there is this recognition on behalf of the Democrats that they have failed to speak to half of America, particularly the working class?
Well, I mean, of course, I think Democrats recognize that this was a closely contested election. On the one hand, Democrats did extraordinarily well. When you look at Vice President Biden, now President-elect Biden's success in flipping 5 states and the Second Congressional District in Nebraska, those are major achievements against an incumbent president. We've only turned out 3 presidents in the last 100 years, and I think that's a statement by the American public. At the same time, as you said, we are divided, and there are important rifts within our society that we need to heal. And President-elect Biden was very clear about his commitment to do just that, to work with everyone, not just the people who voted for him, but all Americans, to start healing those ruptures within the U.S.
But just under 5 million more people voted for Trump than Hillary at the last election. Hispanics, black women and men, the working class, particularly the working class. Where do you think the Democratic Party has gone wrong, or where can it improve in speaking to these groups of people?
Yeah, I think there has been 2 different sets of information sources in the United States. And so we are operating off of very different facts and different understandings of what's happening in the world. I think to say that Democrats have not been saying things that are relevant to the public at large isn't right. I mean, in fact, Democrats have been. I don't think it's being heard on many of the news channels that conservatives have been listening to. I think it's also true that Democrats haven't been hearing some of the concerns expressed by Democrats haven't heard conservative concerns that are expressed on Fox and other news channels. And so part of it is we've got to start listening to each other, and that was part of President-elect Biden's message tonight.
Yeah. I mean, do you think part of the problem is this extreme left element of the Democratic Party that has turned mainstream voters off?
Again, look, this is a president who was elected, or president-elect, who was elected because he's a moderate. And Democrats came out with him. They chose him as their standard bearer. And they came out in record numbers. And so I think this trope, which is often used by conservative media to suggest that the Democratic Party is hostage to some, strong progressive elements that are radical in their vision and socialist, is just wrong. And I think it's dangerous. It's part of what's creating this rift in a great country. Part of what it takes to heal is to stop using false labels and start listening to each other, start talking about facts and talking about the problems that we all want to solve together.
I think it's more the policies that people hear about that, leads to the labels of being on the far left. But
yeah, I think those are the policies that I hear being discussed. I mean, I'm someone who has worked in the policy field for decades, and I know what the Democrats are talking about. They're talking about trying to solve a pandemic and what is the best science to heal people. They're talking about climate change, which is real and which they've been saying for 3 decades is real and needs to be addressed, and that hasn't been because of politics. They are saying that we have changed our economic structure because of new technologies, and we need to start rebuilding our education system to accomplish that. And we've got a political system which has failed the American people because it's too captured by special interests on both sides, Democrat and Republican, and there are efforts to try and address that.
Yeah.
That's what I hear Democrats saying, and that's not what I hear being repeated in conservative media.
Okay. Look, I want to turn to Biden's cabinet. And of course, it's not quite clear yet who will have control of the Senate because there's those 2 special elections that are going to happen in January. But do you think Biden will include some more progressives like Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders in his cabinet, or do you think he's going to have a more moderate cabinet? Who do you expect will feature prominently in senior positions?
See, again, I think that's a conservative media trope that I've heard before. Elizabeth Warren is a senator in Massachusetts. The last time that a senator left Massachusetts, a Republican was elected. That was Scott Brown. And so I don't think there's any chance that they're going to risk losing a seat in the U.S. Senate right now by having Elizabeth Warren serve in the cabinet. And so these are just kind of, boogeymen that are proposed by the far right. I think we really need to stop that kind of discussion.
Well, no, my question was, who do you think will be in his cabinet?
I think he's going to look for the best qualified people in each area of expertise in the cabinet. If you look at the cabinet that President Obama established, his energy secretary was a Nobel laureate in nuclear science. I mean, that's the kind of people that you're looking for. And if you look at the relationship that Joe Biden has had across the aisle over 40 years, the kind of person that he is, he's going to be looking for the most qualified people. So I have great confidence that the people who will be selected are ones that will be admirable, qualified, smart, committed people. And some of them may be Republicans, some of them may be Democrats. But I just want us to stop using labels that don't recognize what's really going on here, which is a president trying to solve really hard problems in a very divided country.
Yeah. Look, and one of the questions that's happening, or one of the conversations that is happening in Australia is what Biden's approach to China will be. Do you think he's going to take a significantly different approach to Trump, or do you think he's going to maintain a hard line, trade and national security position when it comes to China?
We have important strategic differences with China right now, and I think there's a bipartisan consensus on that. At the same time, I think it will be different in two significant ways. One major difference is that Donald Trump was very much a go-it-alone kind of president. He believed in bilateral relationships. He was not a fan of multilateralism. He did not tend to treat partners and allies differently than he did other nations. And I think you saw the effects of that in terms of our relationship with China. He didn't draw together groups of other countries to apply sort of a collective vision to China to try and draw China into a more receptive and cooperative space in areas like trade. I think the other thing you'll see is that Joe Biden spent 40 years in the foreign policy space. He understands statecraft. He knows Xi Jinping. These are not new names to him or new ideas to him. And so for him, something like the Trans-Pacific Partnership, if you were going to abandon 10 allies and partners and do something that China was desperate for, you would engage those allies and partners, try and work with them, and you would also make sure that you got some massive concessions from China in exchange for dropping out. Instead, Donald Trump unsigned it the first day, got nothing in return, and then 2 years later had to do a massively destructive trade war because he hadn't obtained trade concessions when he had the leverage.
Just very quickly,
do you
think there's any possibility Biden will rejoin the TPP?
I wouldn't try and prejudge what President-elect Biden would do, but I think he understands that trade is important, but it's got to be fair trade. It's got to be a trade which is not going to disadvantage America or our allies in terms of opportunities for our workers. And so that's the difference, and that's what I think you would see.
All right. Former Ambassador Jeffrey Bleich, thank you very much for your time and your insights tonight. Really appreciate it.
Great. Thank you very much, Sherry.
Thank you. And thanks again for your patience.